The message came on a Tuesday morning. Every radio on Earth went silent for 3 seconds. Then a voice spoke in every language at once. It was not human. Park Do-hyun was drinking his morning coffee when his phone rang. He was 52 years old, a diplomat who had spent 30 years talking to difficult people. He had worked in war zones. He had sat across from dictators. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. "Ambassador Park," said the voice on the phone, "you need to come in, right now." 1 hour later, Do-hyun stood in a room full of generals, scientists, and politicians. On the wall, a massive screen showed the translated message. The room was completely silent. People were reading the words over and over like they could not believe them. The Galactic Council, 847 species. 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. And they had finally noticed Earth. For 40 years, humanity had known aliens existed. A probe had picked up signals. Telescopes had spotted ships, but every attempt to communicate had been ignored. Earth had been screaming into the void, and the void had not bothered to answer. Until now. "They want us to come to them," said General Moon Tasik, a large man with a shaved head. "They want us to present ourselves for classification." "Classification," repeated Do-hyun, "like animals in a zoo." "Like students applying to a school," corrected Kim Yoonji. She was the head of the Earth Science Council, a small woman with sharp eyes behind thick glasses. "They have tiers, rankings. Species are sorted by age, technology, and contribution to galactic civilization." "And where would we rank?" asked Do-hyun. Yoonji pushed her glasses up her nose. "Based on what we know, near the bottom, maybe the very bottom." The room erupted in angry voices. Generals demanded to know why. Politicians shouted about Earth's achievements. Scientists listed every invention, every discovery, every wonder of human civilization. Do-hyun stayed quiet. He read the message again. The words were polite. The tone was not. This was not an invitation. This was a summons. Earth had been told to appear, to submit, to accept whatever judgment the older races decided to give. "They think we are children," Do-hyun said quietly. The room went silent. "They think we are small and weak and young. They think we should be grateful they even noticed us." He looked at the faces around him. "The question is, are they right?" Nobody answered. 1 week later, a ship called the Dandelion Seed left Earth orbit. It was humanity's first true starship, built in secret over 20 years. Only a few hundred people knew it existed. On board were 12 humans. Do-hyun led them. Yoonji came to study whatever they found. Lieutenant Yoon Hana served as his aide, a young woman with a calm face and steady hands. Pilot Baek Jiwoo sat at the controls, a man who laughed easily, but flew like he was born in space. The journey took 3 months. 3 months of empty darkness between the stars. 3 months to think about what waited at the end. The council station appeared on their screens like a metal moon. It was a ring, spinning slowly in the light of a dying star. Ships flew around it like insects around a lamp. Thousands of ships, millions of beings. "It is beautiful," whispered Hana. "It is a cage," replied Do-hyun. "A pretty cage, but still a cage." They were met at the docking port by creatures that looked like floating crystals. These were the Velith, the message said. One of the oldest races. Very important. Very powerful. The Velith did not speak to them. They simply gestured for the humans to follow. The inside of the station was divided into levels. At the top, Do-hyun could see glass towers and gardens of light, beautiful places for beautiful beings. As they walked lower, the halls grew narrower, the lights grew dimmer, the air grew stale. Their quarters were at the very bottom, near the waste processing center. The rooms were small and gray. The beds were hard. The walls were thin, and through them Do-yun could hear other beings moving and speaking in languages he did not understand. "Welcome to unclassified housing," said their guide, a Velith whose light had a cold blue tint. "You will stay here until your hearing." "How long?" asked Do-yun. "Until the council decides you are ready." The Velith left without another word. Hana looked around the small room. "They have already made up their minds about us." "Yes," said Do-hyun. "They have." Yoonji sat down on one of the hard beds. "This is where species go to be forgotten. I saw the records on our way down. Some beings have lived on this level for centuries, waiting, always waiting." "For what?" asked Ji-woo. "For someone to tell them they matter." That night, Do-hyun walked through the lower levels alone. He saw creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some had scales, some had shells, some had no bodies at all, just clouds of color that drifted through the air. All of them looked at him with the same expression: hope, fear, curiosity, and underneath it all a deep and terrible tiredness. These were beings who had been waiting for so long that they had forgotten what they were waiting for. A small creature approached him. It looked like a mushroom with eyes. Its translator device crackled and spoke in broken English. "New species. Human." "Yes?" "Yes," said Do-hyun. "You will wait. Like us. Long time. Very long time." Do-hyun knelt down so he was at eye level with the creature. "What if I told you I do not plan to wait?" The creature's eyes blinked. It did not understand. Do-hyun smiled. It was not a happy smile. "What if I told you that we did not come here to ask permission?" He stood up and walked back to his quarters. Behind him, the creature watched him go. And for the first time in a very long time, something stirred in its chest. It felt like hope. The grand chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It worked. Do-hyun stood on a floating disc in the center of a room so vast he could not see the walls. Above him, thousands of seats rose in circles toward a ceiling hidden by artificial clouds. In those seats sat representatives of hundreds of species, all looking down at the tiny platform where 12 humans stood together. The disc was only 3 meters wide. The humans had to stand close together just to fit. This was intentional, Do-hyun knew. Everything here was intentional. "Do not show fear," he said quietly to his team. "They are watching everything we do." Hana stood at his right shoulder. Her face was calm, but Do-hyun could see her hands were clenched tight behind her back. Yoonji stood at his left, already studying the chamber with scientific interest. Ji-woo looked up at the assembled aliens with the same expression he wore when facing a difficult flight path. A light appeared at the highest point of the chamber. The Velith High Adjudicator floated down toward them. His name was Vor, and he was made entirely of crystal. Light passed through his body and scattered into rainbows that hurt to look at directly. "Species 8847C, Vor announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Self-named human. You stand before the Galactic Council for classification and placement." Do-yun noticed that the Velith did not use their name. They were just a number, a file in a very large system. "Your species has been observed for 2 of your planetary cycles," Vor continued. "The Council has reviewed your history, your technology, and your behavior. We have reached our decision." He paused. The chamber was completely silent. "Your classification is Tier 9, non-contributing, restricted development." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some sounded surprised. Others sounded amused. A few sounded bored, like they had heard this same judgment 1,000 times before. "The terms of your classification are as follows," Vor said. "You are forbidden from developing faster than light travel. You are forbidden from colonizing any world beyond your home system. You are forbidden from advancing your weapons technology beyond its current state. You will remain in your system until such time as the Council determines you are ready for greater responsibility." He looked down at the humans. "Do you understand these terms?" Do-hyun stepped forward. The disc wobbled slightly under his feet. "We understand what you have said, High Adjudicator." "Then you accept the classification?" "No." The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the murmurs began again, louder this time, confused, uncertain. Thessanvor's light flickered. "Clarify your statement." "We do not accept these terms," Do-hyun said. His voice was steady. "We did not come here to ask for your permission to exist. We did not come here to be judged by beings who ignored us for 40 years. He looked up at the assembled council. Thousands of eyes and sensors and other things he could not name looked back at him. "We came here to tell you something," Do-hyun continued. "We are here. We exist. And what we do with our future is not your decision to make." Thessanvor's form pulsed with cold light. "You misunderstand your position, human. Acceptance is not required. Compliance is mandatory. You do not have a choice in this matter." "Everyone has a choice," Do-hyun replied. "You are simply not used to species making one. If you refuse compliance, your system will be contained. Your planet will be quarantined. You will develop alone, in isolation, until you destroy yourselves or until you learn to accept your place in the natural order of things." Do-hyun nodded slowly. He had expected this. They had all expected this. "Then you have given us your answer," he said, "and now we will give you ours." He turned his back on Thessanvor. He faced his team and nodded once. Then together, the 12 humans began to walk. They crossed the narrow bridge that connected the platform to the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. "You have not been dismissed," Thessanvor called. There was something new in his voice now. Confusion, perhaps even alarm. Do-hyun did not turn around. "We are not waiting to be dismissed, High Adjudicator. We are leaving. There is a difference." "This is unprecedented," another voice called from the upper tiers. "No species has ever refused classification." "Then we are the first," Do-hyun replied. He kept walking. The chamber erupted into noise. Species that had not spoken in decades suddenly found their voices. Arguments broke out across the tiers. Some demanded the humans be stopped. Others demanded explanation. A few simply watched in stunned silence. On the lower tiers, in the seats reserved for lesser species, a different sound began. It started small, just a few beings making noises their translators could not process. But it grew. It spread. And by the time the 12 humans reached the exit, Do-hyun realized what it was. Applause. The lesser species were cheering. Beings who had spent centuries in the shadow of the great powers, waiting for recognition that never came, were celebrating. Not because the humans had won. They had not won anything. But because someone had finally said what they had all been thinking. Someone had finally said no. Hana fell into step beside Do-hyun as they entered the corridor outside the chamber. That could have gone better. It could have gone worse, Do-hyun replied. "They will try to stop us from leaving," Yoonji said. "They have to. If they let us go, every restricted species will start asking questions." Do-hyun smiled. It was a thin smile, tired but determined. "Let them try." Behind them, the doors to the grand chamber sealed shut, but the noise inside continued. The council had not faced a challenge like this in 15,000 years. They had no idea what to do next. Neither did the humans, if Do-hyun was being honest. But at least they were moving. At least they were doing something. And sometimes, that was enough. The news spread faster than light. Every screen on the council station showed the same footage. 12 humans walking out of the grand chamber. A Velith High Adjudicator frozen in confusion. And in the background, the sound of lesser species cheering. In the unclassified levels, beings who had never met each other gathered in common areas to watch. The Keth, mushroom-like creatures who spoke through clouds of colored spores, released waves of yellow and orange. Their translators said the same thing over and over: impossible, impossible, impossible. The hollowed ancient beings made of living stone stood motionless in the corridors. They had waited 2,000 years for the council to recognize them. 2,000 years of patience and silence and hope. And now these strange, soft creatures from a young world had done in one day what they had never dared to imagine. They had said no. On the docking ring, the dandelion seed waited. The ship looked small compared to the massive vessels around it. It was barely 50 meters long, built for a crew of 20. Against the warships of the Council, it would last seconds in a fight. But it was not built to fight. Pilot Baek Ji-woo ran through the pre-flight checks as the rest of the team boarded. His hands moved quickly across the controls. "Ambassador, we have a problem." Do-hyun looked at the tactical display and felt his stomach drop. 47 Council security vessels were moving into position around the station. Their weapons were charging. Their message was clear. No one was leaving. "How long until they have us surrounded?" Do-hyun asked. "They already do," Ji-woo replied. Hana pulled up the communication logs. "We are receiving a message from the Council. They are ordering us to return to the Grand Chamber immediately. They say if we attempt to leave, we will be stopped by force." The crew looked at Do-hyun. 11 faces, all waiting for him to tell them what to do. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else: trust. They trusted him to find a way out. He hoped that trust was not misplaced. "Yeonji," he said quietly, "is it ready?" The scientist nodded. Her fingers hovered over her console. "I can broadcast in 30 seconds, but Ambassador, once we do this, there is no going back. They will know everything." "They will know what we want them to know," Do-hyun replied. "That is the point." He sat down in the command chair. For a moment, he thought about Earth. He thought about the blue oceans and green forests and the billions of people who had no idea what was happening right now. He thought about his daughter, who was probably sitting in her classroom, learning about history. Today, her father was going to make some. "Do it," he said. Yeonji pressed the button. Every screen on the council station flickered. Every speaker crackled. And then, in every language spoken by every species in the galaxy, a message began to play. "This is Ambassador Park Do-hyun of the United Earth Government." On the bridge of the lead security vessel, Commander Vareth Sol watched the transmission with growing alarm. His crew, all Veleth, stopped what they were doing to listen. 40 years ago, humanity discovered that we were not alone in the universe. We sent messages. We sent probes. We shouted into the darkness, hoping someone would answer. No one did. In the Grand Chamber, Thessenvor watched the same message on a floating screen. Around him, the council had dissolved into chaos. Representatives were demanding explanations, accusations, action. He ignored them all. We could have waited. We could have been patient. We could have accepted that the universe did not care about us. Do-hyun's voice was steady, almost gentle. But that is not who we are. That has never been who we are. A map appeared on every screen. It showed the galaxy, vast and beautiful and full of stars. And scattered across the outer edges, far beyond council space, 300 points of light began to glow. These are coordinates, 300 of them. Each one represents a human colony ship, launched in secret over the past 40 years. Each ship carries 20,000 colonists. Each ship has everything needed to build a new civilization from nothing. In the unclassified levels, the Keth representative stopped breathing. The hollowed went completely still. Every being on the lower tiers stared at the map with something like wonder. By the time you receive this message, most of these ships are beyond your reach. You can blockade Earth. You can quarantine our solar system. You can do whatever you want to our home world. But you cannot stop what has already happened. The dandelion seed's engines roared to life. The ship began to move toward the security line. Humanity does not wait for permission. We do not ask to be recognized. We were spreading across our own planet for 200,000 years before you knew we existed. We will be spreading across this galaxy long after you have forgotten why you tried to stop us. Commander Verithsol stared at his tactical display. His weapons were charged. His orders were clear. But his hands did not move. We are not your children, Do-hyun continued. We are not your students. We are not your pets. And we are not your problem. Unless you make us one. The dandelion seed passed between two security vessels. It was close enough that Jiwoo could see the lights on their hulls. Close enough that one shot would turn them into dust. No one fired. The door is open, Do-hyun said. For anyone who wants to walk through it. The transmission ended. The dandelion seed accelerated into open space. Behind it, the council station grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among millions. On the bridge, Hana let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like hours. They let us go. They did not let us do anything, Do-hyun replied. They just could not figure out how to stop us. Yoonji was staring at her console, watching data streams from across the galaxy. The message is spreading. Every corner of council space is receiving it. Every species is seeing those coordinates. Good, said Do-hyun. Jiwoo plotted a course for home. But as his hands moved across the controls, he was smiling. Ambassador, what happens now? Do-hyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 300 ships were carrying humanity's future to new worlds. Somewhere out there, everything was about to change. Now, he said, we see who else wants to walk. 3 years passed. On Earth, people called it the Year of the Walk. Schools taught it in history class. Artists painted it on walls. Musicians wrote songs about the 12 humans who told the universe they would not bow. But the real changes happened far from Earth. The Galactic Council spent the first year arguing. The Velith demanded military action. Send fleets to Earth. Destroy the colony ships. Show the galaxy what happened to species who refused their place. But the colony ships were already gone. 300 vessels, scattered across the frontier, moving toward worlds the Council had never mapped. By the time any fleet could reach them, they would already be building, already growing, already becoming something the Council could not control. By the second year, survey ships began sending back reports. The human colonies were real. Not just real, but thriving. Survey Chief Goreth Nal was a Morak, an insect-like being who had been sent to the frontier as punishment for a financial crime. He did not expect to find anything interesting. He was wrong. Colony 7, he reported to his superiors. Population, 43,000 humans. Infrastructure, advanced. But that is not the strange part. He transmitted images. Buildings with multiple environmental sections, atmosphere processors that could produce different air mixtures, gravity generators that could be adjusted for different body types. They are not building for themselves, Goreth Nal said. They are building for everyone. The Council did not understand. Why would humans spend resources on beings they had never met? Why would they prepare homes for species that had done nothing for them? The answer came in the third year, when the first refugee ship arrived at Colony 7. It was a small vessel, barely holding together after a long journey. Inside were 800 Keth, the mushroom-like beings from the unclassified levels of the Council station. They had stolen the ship. They had fled in the night. They had traveled for months on almost no supplies. And when they arrived, the humans were waiting for them. Nam Soo-jin was 30 years old. She had come to Colony 7 as an agricultural engineer. She knew how to grow food, how to manage water systems, how to turn dead rock into living soil. She did not know how to welcome aliens, but she learned. "Welcome to Colony 7, she said as the Keth emerged from their ship. Their spore clouds filled the landing area with colors she had never seen before. "My name is Sujin. I am the administrator here." The Keth leader approached her. Its translator crackled with static, struggling to find words. "Why?" it asked. "We are nothing. We have nothing. The council says we do not matter. Why do you help?" Sujin thought about the question. Behind her, human workers were already preparing housing for the refugees. Medical teams were setting up stations. Children were watching from windows, curious about these strange visitors. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago," she said, "and because we have room." The news spread quickly. The Keth had found a home. A real home. Not a cage in the bottom of a station, but a place where they could live and grow and matter. Within 6 months, more ships arrived. The Hollowed came, ancient and slow and patient. The Renish came, small creatures with too many legs who had spent centuries being ignored. Species whose names humans could not pronounce came, carrying everything they owned, hoping for something better. Colony 7 expanded, then Colony 12, then Colony 34. The humans called it the open door policy. Anyone who wanted to come could come. There were no tiers, no classifications, no judgments. On the council station, Thesson Vor watched these developments with growing concern. The lower levels were emptying. Species that had waited for millennia were simply leaving, walking out, just like the humans had done. "This cannot continue," said Adjudicator Marith Sol at an emergency council meeting. "They are destabilizing the entire system. If we do not act, more will leave. The structure will collapse." "What do you suggest?" asked another adjudicator. "We cannot force them to stay. We cannot attack the human colonies without starting a war we may not win." "We do not know that we would lose," Marith Sol replied. "We do not know that we would win," Thesson Vor said quietly. "And that is the problem." He thought about the humans. Such a young species. Such a brief history. They had only discovered fire a few 100,000 years ago. They had only left their planet a few centuries ago. By galactic standards, they were infants. But infants grew. Infants learned. Infants became something else. "They are not building an empire," Thesson Vor said slowly. "They are building a family. A different kind of family than we have ever seen. And I do not know how to fight that." The council had no answer. On Colony 7, Sujin stood on a hill overlooking the city. It had grown so much in 3 years. Human buildings stood next to Keth gardens. Hollowed structures rose beside Renish tunnels. It was messy and chaotic and beautiful. Her assistant, a young Keth named Bora, stood beside her. It had taken the human name after arriving, wanting something that was easy for its new friends to say. "The council is afraid of us," Bora said. Its spores were blue today, which meant thoughtfulness. "They should be," Sujin replied. "Why?" Sujin smiled. "Because we proved that their system is not the only way. Because we showed that species do not have to wait for permission to matter. Because we demonstrated that the universe is big enough for everyone." She looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, more ships were coming. More beings were choosing to walk away from the only home they had ever known. "They built walls," Sujin said. "We built doors. And doors, in the end, always win." Bora released a cloud of golden spores. The translator rendered it as hope. It was a good word, Sujin thought. A good word for a new beginning. 10 years after the walkout, Park Do-hyun returned to the council station. He was 62 now. His hair had turned completely white. He walked with a slight limp from an old injury, a reminder of difficult days on Colony 23. But his eyes were still sharp, and his voice was still steady. He came alone this time on a ship called the Second Thought. It was a small vessel barely large enough for a crew of 5, but Do-hyun did not need a crew. He did not need protection. He was not coming to fight. He was coming to offer something. The council station looked different than he remembered. The upper levels still gleamed with the light of the elder races, but the lower levels, the unclassified sections where he had once been housed, were nearly empty now. Most of those species had left. Most of them had found somewhere else to be, somewhere they mattered. The grand chamber was still impressive, still vast, still designed to make visitors feel small. But Do-hyun noticed something different as he stepped onto the floating platform. The seats were not as full as before. Many of the elder races had retreated from council affairs. Some had closed their borders entirely, unwilling to participate in a system that seemed to be crumbling around them. Others had simply grown tired of the endless debates about what to do with the humans. And in the middle tiers, in seats that had been empty a decade ago, sat new faces. Keth representatives, their spore clouds carefully controlled in the formal setting. Hollowed delegates, ancient and patient. Species that had once been considered too insignificant to speak now had voices of their own. High Adjudicator Thesson Vor still occupied the central position. He was older now, too. His crystalline form showed hairline cracks that had not been there before. The light that passed through him was dimmer, softer, touched with something that might have been weariness. "Ambassador Park," the Veleth said, "you requested this audience. We have granted it. Speak." Do-hyun bowed his head slightly. It was a gesture of respect, not submission. There was a difference. "Thank you, High Adjudicator. I will not take much of your time." He produced a small device from his pocket and activated it. A holographic map appeared above the platform, filling the chamber with soft blue light. It showed the galaxy, vast and beautiful. But it was different from the maps the Council used. The Council maps showed tiers and boundaries and restricted zones. This map showed connections. Lines of light linking hundreds of worlds together in a web that stretched across the frontier. The Human Frontier Cooperative, Do-hyun said. 412 worlds, 67 species, complete freedom of movement, settlement, and trade. He looked up at the assembled council. No tiers, no classifications, no permissions required. The chamber was silent. Representatives studied the map with expressions Do-hyun could not read. Some looked angry, some looked afraid. A few looked curious. "We did not come here to threaten you," Do-hyun continued. "We did not come here to demand anything. We are not asking to join your council. We stopped caring about your recognition a long time ago." Thesson Vor's light flickered. "Then why did you come?" "To extend an invitation." The words hung in the air. "Any species that wishes to leave the council is welcome in the cooperative. Any being that wants to try a different way of living is free to join us. We will not force anyone. We will not persuade. We are simply telling you that the door is open." He paused. "It has always been open. You just had to be willing to walk through it." From the middle tiers, a Keth representative released a cloud of bright yellow spores. The translator rendered it as agreement, support, gratitude. Other species began to react as well. Soft sounds of approval rippled through the chamber. Thesson Vor raised a crystalline arm, calling for silence. "You have disrupted a system that maintained order for 15,000 years, the High Adjudicator said. His voice was not angry, it was tired. "You have taken our lesser species. You have weakened our foundations. You have shown the galaxy that our rules can be broken." Do-hyun nodded. "Yes, we have." "And you feel no shame? No regret?" Do-hyun thought about the question carefully. He thought about Colony 7 and its gardens of alien life. He thought about the ships that still arrived every month, carrying beings who had chosen hope over fear. He thought about Sujin and Bora and all the others who had built something new from nothing. "I feel pride," he said simply. "I feel joy, and I feel hope." He looked directly at Thesson Vor. "Your system was never about order, High Adjudicator. It was about control. It was about deciding who mattered and who did not. It was about making sure that the powerful stayed powerful and the weak stayed weak." He gestured at the map still floating above him. "We did not destroy your system. We simply showed that it was already broken. We showed that beings did not have to accept the place you assigned them. We showed that the universe is big enough for everyone to matter." Thesson Vor was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "What do you want from us, Ambassador?" Do Hyun smiled. It was a gentle smile, touched with sadness. "Nothing," he said. "That is the point. We never needed anything from you. We just needed you to get out of our way." He deactivated the holographic map. The chamber returned to its normal light. "The invitation stands. For as long as there is a cooperative, there will be a place for anyone who wants to join it, even you, High Adjudicator, even the Velith." He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the vast chamber, just as they had a decade ago. "Ambassador!" Thesson Vor called out. Do Yoon stopped. He did not turn around. "Do you truly believe this will work? Your cooperative? Your open doors? The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Beings are selfish. Systems collapse." Do Yoon considered the question. "Maybe," he admitted. "Maybe it will all fall apart someday. Maybe we are wrong about everything. But at least we tried. At least we built something worth building." He looked over his shoulder. "Can you say the same?" He walked through the exit and did not look back. The debates in the grand chamber continued long into the night. Motions were proposed. Votes were taken. Arguments raged across the tiers. But in the frontier, something new was growing. Ships flew between worlds that had never known each other. Species that had been alone for millennia found friends, neighbors, family. Children of a dozen different races played together in gardens that should never have existed. And above Colony 1, the first world humanity had built among the stars, a simple stone monument stood on a hilltop. The words carved into it were in every language of the cooperative, but the meaning was the same. Humanity does not conquer galaxies. We just refuse to be told we cannot live in them. Below the monument, the city spread out toward the horizon. Lights twinkled in the darkness like earthbound stars. And somewhere in that city, beings who had once been strangers sat together, sharing food and stories and hope. The door was open. It would always be open. And that, in the end, was enough.